When the Abraham Accords were first conceived back in 2020, they brought with them a wave of optimism. Their advocates claim that they were the Middle East's best chance at peace since at least the Oslo Accords, and they were surprisingly successful. After the UAE agreed to normalise relations with Israel in August 2020, they were quickly followed by Bahrain, Sudan, and then Morocco, and both Trump and Biden were apparently optimistic about eventually getting the Saudis to sign on. Unsurprisingly, Israel's assault on Gaza after October the 7th closed off the possibility of further Arab-Israel normalisation. But since Trump's peace deal, bullish right-wingers in both the US and Israel have started talking up the accords again. And on Thursday, Trump announced Kazakhstan would be signing on, which the White House touted as proof that the accords were very much still alive. So in this video, we're going to explain what the accords actually are, why Kazakhstan's inclusion doesn't really make sense, and whether they can be revived. If this kind of topic is interesting to you, you'd enjoy the next issue of our magazine Too Long, where we're talking about the new Middle East. In this issue, we'll be running through each country in the region and talking about their future, before reflecting on how recent events have reshaped the Middle East forever. Pre-order your copy or subscribe by clicking the link in the description. So let's start with a bit of context. The Abraham Accords are a series of normalization agreements between Israel and its Arab neighbours. They were first conceived by the Trump administration late in his first term, with the first normalization agreements coming between Israel and the UAE in August 2020. This made the UAE the first Arab country to normalise relations with Israel since Jordan in 1994. The only other Arab country on the list is Egypt, which normalised relations back in 1979. Anyway, the UAE were quickly followed by Bahrain, which signed on to the Abraham Accords in September of that year, then Sudan, which signed on in October, although Sudan is yet to ratify the agreement domestically, and finally Morocco, which signed on in December. The Accords were considered a remarkable success in the US, given they had finally brought peace between Israel and at least some of its Arab neighbours, and Biden continued with them when he took over from Trump in 2021. Both Biden and Trump focused their diplomatic efforts on Saudi Arabia, which already had informal relations with Israel and is one of the largest countries in the Middle East. Getting Saudi Arabia into the Abraham Accords would have been a real diplomatic coup for both the US and Israel. It would have made Israel look far less isolated in the region and would have reasserted America's diplomatic power, which has long been in question, and especially since the China-brokered normalization deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran back in March 2023. Now, at this point, you might be asking, why would Arab countries normalize relations with Israel, given the historical baggage? Well, different countries have different motivations, but generally speaking, the apparent success of the Accords reflected two geopolitical realities. First, Arab countries were predominantly worried about Iran rather than Israel, and saw normalization with Israel as a way of building a wider anti-Iranian alliance. Second, and relatedly, Arab countries were no longer as invested in the Palestinian struggle for statehood. This is a bit of a generalisation, but there was a sense that Hamas's alliance with Iran had led at least some Arab countries to see the conflict between Israel and Palestine as just another axis in the Israel-Iran conflict, rather than a battle for Arab self-determination, which is how it was seen a couple of decades ago. This is why at least Arab countries were apparently more willing to go ahead with normalisation relations with Israel, despite no concrete Israeli commitment to a two-state solution, which had previously been seen as a precondition. The Abraham Accords were also made possible by economic self-interest. Many Arab countries thought Israel's high-tech service-based economy would help them diversify away from oil and gas, and the US, which offered a variety of incentives to get Arab countries to sign on. In Morocco's case, for instance, the US rewarded normalization by recognizing Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara, which culminated in a UN Security Council resolution backing Morocco's claim last week. Sudan was taken off the US list of state sponsors of terrorism, and Saudi Arabia was reportedly hoping to extract an Article 5-like security commitment from the US. Unsurprisingly, the events of October the 7th and their aftermath scuppered all this. Whatever they thought of Hamas, Arab countries were appalled by Israel's reaction and its assault on Gaza, which has killed an estimated 68,000 Palestinians and is widely considered a genocide. Relations between Israel and its Arab neighbours haven't been helped by comments by Israeli ministers, including the repeated suggestion that Arab countries should take in expelled Palestinians, and deteriorated further after Israel's airstrikes on Qatar. Nonetheless, since Hamas tentatively agreed to Trump's peace deal last month, bullish right-wingers in both Israel and the US, including Trump himself, have started talking up the accords again, implicitly insisting that, whatever they say out loud, Arab elites are secretly still keen on normalization, and they only really criticize Israel to appease their publics. The recent announcement about Kazakhstan joining the Abraham Accords should be seen in this light. Kazakhstan's inclusion is entirely symbolic. They've had diplomatic relations with Israel since 1992, and no real historical baggage. Rather, the announcement is clearly an attempt to draw international attention back to the Accords, and, as JD Vance admitted on Friday, give them some new, quote, momentum. So, will it work? Should we expect a flurry of new admissions to the Accords, as Trump apparently hopes? Well, anything's possible, but we've got to say, we're not optimistic. For starters, this all assumes the Gaza peace deal actually holds, which is by no means guaranteed. Moreover, even if Arab elites do secretly want normalization, and again, we don't think this is necessarily true, they're still to some extent responsive to public opinion, and Arab publics aren't going to just forget about the alleged genocide that happened on their doorstep now that there's a paper-thin peace deal in place. There's also quite a lot of evidence to suggest that many Arab countries now see Israel, not Iran, as the main threat to regional stability. After Israel's strikes on Qatar, for instance, there was a lot of talk about some sort of anti-Israel Islamic NATO, including not only the Gulf countries but Iran as well. In this light, it looks like the geopolitics have essentially flipped. The Abraham Accords were about building an anti-Iranian axis, but Arab countries are now apparently interested in building an anti-Israel axis. Finally, normalization would be a lot easier if Israel could make even some token commitment to a two-state solution. But it's not clear Israeli politicians are willing to even do this. Despite the fact that Trump's peace plan made no concrete commitments to a Palestinian state, Netanyahu still had to immediately distance himself from it, insisting in a Hebrew language interview just hours after he apparently agreed to the deal that he would never agree to a Palestinian state. All in all, while no one knows the future, it's very hard to see the big Arab countries signing on to the Abraham Accords anytime soon, and Kazakhstan's inclusion risks essentially cheapening the Accords without really moving the needle. If you're interested in major news events like this, you'll have certainly been paying attention to what's happening in the Middle East recently, with the whole region seemingly in a state of flux. The next issue of our magazine Too Long is all about that, with our headline section titled The New Middle East. In it, we run through each country in the region and discuss their future, before reflecting on how recent events have reshaped the Middle East forever. We obviously talk about the Middle East a lot in videos, but this is our most zoomed out, detailed and thought through coverage yet, truly outlining how we see this region re-emerging. It's not just that though, there's also been a whole lot of major elections this year. So in this issue we have a whole section talking about all of the major elections that have taken place this year, and how global politics has changed. There's also articles on everything from China's continued dominance, politics in the UK, and how politicians have hijacked social media. This latest issue is now available to pre-order on our website, and as always, subscribing will get you 20% off not only this copy, but also every future copy as long as you're subscribed. Plus, just this time round, we're offering bundles with our book Assembly Required and our 2026 calendar. For instance, you can subscribe to Too Long and get a copy of the book for just £43.99, or add a calendar for only a few pounds more. Anyway, click the link in the description for all of the offers, and thank you for supporting the channel.